The stars were whispering secrets that night, cloaked beneath a sky inked deep with twilight, and somehow the world paused just long enough for us to meet eyes across a room that had too many people but only one moment. I remember your laugh, how it slid into the cracks of my silence like it had always belonged there. You didn't speak first, but you smiled, and in that curve there was a gravity I had no will to fight. You moved like someone who had stories in their pocket, someone who knew how to listen without interrupting the heartbeats between words. The distance between us felt impossible, but so did the idea of walking away. My hand brushed yours as if on accident, though there was no accident in the way I wanted to memorize the shape of you. Your outline framed by soft music and the heat of something unnamed. I wasn't ready to fall, but love doesn't ask for readiness. It only demands presence, and that night I was more present than I'd ever been. You spoke, and your voice was quiet thunder. It wasn't just the timbre or the weight of your words, it was the way you looked at me when you said them, like you had already seen the part of me I kept hidden under layers of practiced strength. You made me forget to be afraid. We laughed about nothing for too long, the kind of laughter that comes not from jokes but from feeling seen. I watched the world dim around us, not because the lights faded, but because nothing else held importance. You had a way of leaning in when you listened, your brow furrowing at just the right moments, as if every detail I shared became yours to carry too. I didn't know then how much I needed that someone to share even the weightless things. And yet you never made them feel weightless. You made them feel sacred. I didn't know then how rare that would become, or how easily your presence would turn into my solace. There were moments in that night I wish I could bottle, your fingers tapping the rim of your glass, while you thought, the way your eyes lit up when I surprised you with a story, how close you sat without ever crowding me. You respected my space but still made it feel like yours. As the hours unraveled, like a spool of golden thread, I found myself catching little glances at you when you looked away, studying the way your lips parted just before you spoke. Every detail mattered, though I didn't understand why then. I only knew that something in me had shifted, something deep, like a tide turning toward a moon it had long denied. I wasn't used to softness, I was all edges and self-preservation. But you leaned into me like you weren't afraid to get cut. And that bravery, it was love in its earliest form. Gentle, curious, undefined but undeniable. I didn't know how to name it, but my soul did. Do you remember when the music slowed and without asking, you held out your hand? There was no audience, no pressure, just a quiet invitation. I hesitated, not because I didn't want to, but because taking your hand felt like crossing a line I couldn't uncross. But then I did, and you smiled like I'd just chosen the right path in some secret test I didn't know I was taking. We moved in a rhythm that didn't match the music but matched each other. My feet stumbled once, and you laughed, not cruelly but as if it was the most endearing thing you'd seen all night. I laughed too, and in that small exchange, the room melted away. All I saw was you. All I heard was your heartbeat. I didn't think it was possible to fall in love in a single evening. I had read stories, sung songs, whispered disbelief, but that night rewrote everything. You didn't just hold my hand, you held the part of me that had been aching for someone who understood. After the dance, we wandered through the city, both of us unwilling to let the night end. The air smelled of rain that hadn't fallen yet, and the street lamps cast halos around us, as though the universe was trying to make the night holy. I remember our steps sinking, our shoulders brushing, the comfortable silences that felt like home. You told me stories about your childhood, some funny, some sad, all laced with the vulnerability of someone who doesn't fear their past. I listened, not just with ears, but with everything in me. I stored your memories like keepsakes. You spoke of dreams you hadn't yet chased, and I wanted nothing more than to be the wind behind you when you finally did. We passed a bookstore, and you stopped to read the titles in the window. You traced the glass with your fingertip and said, "One day I want to write something that makes someone feel less alone." I didn't say it then, but you already had for me. We sat on a bench beneath a flickering light, and you leaned back like you were trying to count stars in a sky that refused to show them. I watched your face instead, how peaceful you looked, how the weight of the world seemed to pause on your shoulders only to slide off into the night. I wanted to touch your cheek, to tell you how beautiful you were in that unguarded moment, but the words caught in my throat. So instead I offered you silence, the kind that feels full, not empty. You turned to me, your gaze soft, almost searching. "What are you thinking?" you asked. And I lied. I said something light, something forgettable. But what I was really thinking was that I didn't want the night to end. That I had just found something I didn't know I was missing. That your presence had taken root in places of me I thought were barren. I didn't say any of that, but maybe you knew. Maybe you always did. The night wore on, but sleep never found us. We traded philosophies under streetlights, debated music and fate, and shared pieces of ourselves, like children offering their most precious stone. You told me your fears, and I didn't flinch. I told you mine, and you didn't look away. There was a sacredness in that, a communion of truth, in a world so often covered in masks. When you reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear, it wasn't just a touch, it was a declaration that you saw me, that I mattered, that love didn't have to shout to be heard. It could live in whispers, in gestures, in long glances that said more than paragraphs ever could. I wasn't sure what morning would bring. I wasn't sure if this magic had an expiration, but I knew, right then, that the night we fell wasn't an accident. It was a moment written long before we ever met. You walked me home just before sunrise, and the city had softened into a sleepy hush. The sky was blushing at the edges, unsure whether to hold on tonight or embrace the day. I felt the same. You stopped at my door, hands in your pockets, eyes on mine. There was no rush, no awkward shuffle, just a stillness that pulsed with meaning. I said thank you. The words like thank you felt too small. You smiled, that quiet, knowing smile that had become my favorite thing in the world. And then, without asking, without hesitating, you leaned in and kissed me. It wasn't fireworks or symphonies. It was better. It was slow, thoughtful, honest. It was the kind of kiss that feels like it knows your name before you say it. When we parted, I didn't want to open the door. I didn't want to step into a world that hadn't met you yet. But I did, and the moment it closed behind me, I leaned against it, heart echoing the shape of your goodbye. In the days that followed, I replayed that night like a favorite song. Every detail mattered. Your laugh, your touch, the way you said my name like it was something rare. I found pieces of you in everything, the scent of coffee, the rhythm of a song, the quiet between sentences. I didn't know what we were yet, or what we were becoming, but I knew what we weren't. We weren't forgettable. We weren't fleeting. The night we fell had carved its name into my story, and I wasn't trying to erase it. You made me want to be softer, not out of weakness, but out of truth. You made me want to hope again, even when the world had taught me not to. You made me believe that sometimes, love doesn't crash in. It sneaks up beside you on an ordinary night, and says, here I am, and all you can do is say yes. So if anyone ever asks me when I fell in love with you, I'll tell them it wasn't one single moment, but 1,000 small ones, stitched together in the quiet of that night. It was the way you listened, the way you didn't try to fix me, just held space for me to breathe. It was in your patience, your stillness, your willingness to stay present. The night we fell wasn't about grand gestures. It was about two people who met at the intersection of vulnerability and timing. And in that brief window, we chose each other. I don't know what tomorrow holds. I don't know what storms we'll face. But I do know this, no matter how far we go, no matter what changes, we will always have that night. The night we fell, and sometimes that's enough to carry a lifetime.